We are recording. So a little interesting fact has occurred, everyone. It turns out that my friend MLG Lefty was going to recommend this guy's channel to me. I'm a bit concerned that that he was going to do that, and I somehow managed to do that before he tells me. But yeah, we're watching another episode, another bunch of videos from MrNightmare, because partly his content is actually decent. Right, just loading my bolt action.
In November of 2021, I was traveling from Philly to Las Vegas to compete in a jiu-jitsu tournament. I traveled the country a fair amount, and I would normally stay with whichever teams were also competing as a way to save money. This time, though, for various reasons, I had to stay alone. I booked an Airbnb not far from the Vegas Strip. I did so kind of hastily, and didn't realize that the neighborhood wasn't the greatest. I thought of canceling and booking something else, but went against my instincts and rationalized that it was close to everything I needed, and I wouldn't be spending much time there anyway. I got to the location and didn't see the host. I wouldn't know who to look for anyway, since the Airbnb profile picture was of a flower. The host gave me the key code to the room I was staying in, a small studio apartment that shared a wall with the host's house. There was only one door in and out of the studio. The first red flag was that the key code for the lock on the door was 12345667. I thought that was weird, but the password for the Wi-Fi was password, so I figured that the host was just an older person who wasn't tech savvy, and the reviews for the room were pretty good. Around 9:30 p.m. is when things got creepy. I was close to falling asleep when I heard a tapping on the window in front of my bed where I was laying down. There was drapes covering the window, so I couldn't see who was making the noise. I responded by saying, "Huh?" loud enough for whoever it was to hear me. A minute or two went by in silence before I heard the tapping on the window once again. I said, "Hello?" pretty loud, and it went away. I was pretty on edge at this point, and immediately wrote a message to the host asking if it was them tapping on the window. About an hour went by before they finally responded saying, "I was going to bring you some water, but it seemed like you were asleep, so I left." I was still very much on edge, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to sleep. I contemplated going for a walk to the store or taking a shower just to clear my mind, but something told me to just sit tight and wait to see what happens. About 45 minutes went by. It's about midnight at this point, and I heard some noise outside. I then heard the distinct sound of someone trying the key code on my door. The attempt failed, but I could hear them trying again. This time I heard the sound of the lock disengaging. The door was unlocked. I threw the blankets off of me and ran to the door as it was opening up towards me, and slammed it shut in this person's face. I was yelling, "This is my room, get out of here, leave." They responded in a deep voice from the other side of the door. Madol said this is my room. Madol was the name of the host. I kept responding with what I said before and called the cops. I spoke loud enough so they knew I was on the phone with the police. Police eventually came and were not surprised at all by the story I told them. They said they would hang around until I called an Uber to leave. The host was very combative and unapologetic. Their alibi for who that person was changed multiple times. When the Uber arrived, I jumped in and felt relieved to be getting out of there. It still creeps me out that I never saw the person who was opening my door. I have a feeling that it was some kind of setup. If the host knew I was flying in from the East Coast, the 9:30 p.m. tapping on the window would have been equivalent to my 12:30 a.m., and the invasion would be about 3 a.m. Maybe it would have just been a robbery, but it could have been much worse.
I am so confused. I was paying attention, but when you just said something about the fucking time zones, mate, that's when I just fucking got confused. You had to...
My boyfriend Sean and I went on a trip to Vermont in the summer of 2016. I booked us a stay in an Airbnb that was listed as off-grid cabin. It had a few hundred reviews with a 5-star rating, so I didn't think it looked sketchy. The cabin was an old one-room cabin with a pot stove and a loft area. There was no electricity, and it was in the remote part of Vermont down an old dirt road. There was one house about half a mile away that was owned by the host, and she was away, so we were alone. We got there around 4 p.m. and had a really nice evening cooking dinner and playing board games by candlelight. We had hiked all day and were exhausted by 10, so I went up to the loft to sleep while my boyfriend decided to sit outside and smoke. About 20 minutes later, while I was in that space between deep sleep and consciousness, I was jolted awake by a large banging sound on the side of the cabin. Before I could yell down, Sean yelled up to me asking if that was me. Confused and feeling like I must be dreaming, I groggily yelled, "No, was that you?" He said no, but didn't seem too worried since he was sitting outside and didn't see anyone. We go camping frequently, so it takes a lot for us to get freaked out by random noises in the night. We figured it was probably a tree branch that broke off and fell against the cabin. I started to fall asleep again when there was another loud bang, like a thwacking sound from another part of the cabin. At this, I jumped out of bed and climbed down from the loft. I met Sean as he was coming through the door. He told me to grab all the sharp things that I could find and go back into the loft. He was putting on a calm demeanor, but I could tell he was a little freaked out. I asked him what he thought it was, and he cautiously said that he didn't know. He said he didn't see anything when he was outside, but he thought he might have heard footsteps. As we were whispering, we heard a small, slow scraping noise that trailed for about 3 feet against the wall of the cabin, then silence again. I was pretty scared at this point and didn't know what to do. Our car was parked about 100 feet away from the cabin, so we would have to face whatever was out there in the dark in order to get to it, which is probably what they wanted. I was also afraid that if this was a human, that they might have done something like slash the tires or block our ability to get back down the driveway.
Probably.
Sean told me to stay very quiet and go back up to the loft while he sat downstairs and waited. He had a hunting knife and a large stick, and I had a few steak knives, but otherwise we were sitting ducks. The downstairs of the cabin had
sitting duck, mate. You can do some serious damage.
Were just screens, so if someone was outside, they could easily be watching us, or could slash through the screen to get inside. I wanted to stay downstairs, but Sean ordered me to go upstairs, saying that it would be easier to fight this guy without me there if it came to that. I went up and sat in the middle of the bed, clutching an array of knives in my fists. I don't think I ever listened so intently before. Sean yelled out hello to see if he could get any response, or perhaps scare it away if it was an animal. We heard nothing for what felt like 20 minutes. Then the scraping sound came back, much louder, like someone was dragging a rake or a hoe across the side of the cabin. I heard clear, methodical footsteps trailing off around the side of the cabin. Sean then came up to the loft and pulled the ladder up. He said he didn't like how they could see him, but he couldn't see them, and if they came in the cabin, he could at least get the jump on them from up here. We sat on the bed in silence. I was looking at him in terror. It was probably around midnight at this point, and I realized that we were going to be stuck in that cabin until morning. The noises continued and intensified. There was more banging that seemed to be coming from all different sides of the cabin. Intermittently, the scraping returned. This could not have been an animal. The sounds were too methodical. We didn't hear any grunting like there was a bear or bobcat, and there were constant footsteps, pacing footsteps. There was a clear crunch of one foot going in front of the other all around the sides of the cabin. There would be pauses of 10 to 20 minute intervals, then it would all start up again. At one point there was a strange rattling sound on the outside, like someone was trying to shake or climb the pipe on the outside of the cabin that fed into the potbelly stove. This carried on for hours. Sean and I just laid in that bed, paralyzed in silent fear, staring into each other's terrified faces. I kept waiting to hear the front door burst open or the screen window rip. I was convinced that we were both about to be murdered, and every gruesome possibility kept playing in my head. I have never been that terrified, but no one ever came into the cabin. We never heard any voices, whispers, deranged giggling, or anything. Just the loud scraping, banging, rattling, and footsteps. Finally, around 5 in the morning, we started to hear roosters in the distance, and the loft was slowly lit by early dawn light. The sounds finally stopped. I got about 2 hours of sleep, because we had to drive into Pennsylvania later that day. My car was thankfully fine, and we packed everything up as quickly as possible to get the heck out of there. Sean looked around the cabin, trying to find scraping marks or clear footprints, but there was nothing. I messaged the Airbnb host to tell her about our experience, and she said it must have been a porcupine. If you could find a porcupine that makes loud banging noises and can walk like a human, let me know. To this day, we debate about what it could have been. Sean thinks it was a crazy local trying to scare us away. Either way, I'm really glad I was not murdered that night.
Yeah, lady, you might want to reconsider your location.
By myself in an area in Arizona that I had a job interview. Since it was so far from home, I made a short trip out of it. I went with this one specific Airbnb because it was much cheaper than any hotels I could find. It was about half an hour away from where I'd be interviewing for, which was fine with me. It was off some dead-end, secluded road, and it had a nice view of the desert in the backyard. I brought my laptop with me to get work done at my at-the-time current job during the day, so that kept me busy most of the days I was there. I stayed for 3 days. My interview was on the second day that I was there, which was a Tuesday. I would be leaving Friday, so on Monday, the night before my interview, I was practicing interview questions for this specific company, and just generally getting some last-minute knowledge on their firm. I was doing this on my laptop in the living room of the little house, probably around 9 p.m., when there was a tap at the window. I say tap because it wasn't exactly a knock. It sounded more like it could have been someone's finger. My head, of course, swung to the left to look at the window in reaction. I didn't see anyone, but it was also pitch black outside. I was kind of scared to look out the window, but I had to be a man and just do it. And there was no one as far as the eye could see. Just darkness. Of course, maybe it could have been a bug hitting the window. We've got some pretty nasty bugs here after all. The next day, I got through my interview and thought I did pretty well. So for the rest of my little trip there, I explored different parts of the town in my car, ate at different restaurants, and sat in the backyard and relaxed in the sun. Little did I know, I was likely being watched while I was in the backyard. That night, I was inside watching Breaking Bad on Netflix when it happened again. A single tap at the window. Now it was obvious it wasn't a bug. I was even more disturbed now, but once again rushed to the window. Even though I saw no one, that didn't mean someone wasn't out there. I checked the windows by the front door, then opened the door and looked outside for a second. Since there was no one there, I went back inside and then went to the back door. I stepped outside onto the back porch and looked out to the desert behind the house. Silence and darkness. And then I heard a click. A sound someone made, like clicking their tongue at the roof of their mouth. It was off in the distance, beyond the light from the house. It was out somewhere in that cold desert. I felt as though someone could be hiding behind any number of those bushes, watching me and toying with me. I yelled out, and almost as if they did it in response, there was another click. I pinpointed the direction it came from, and looked that way. I could see someone now, standing not too far away, dressed in dark clothes, blending into the darkness of the desert. I started walking a little closer, then stopped.
Unfortunately for them, do they not know that I have disguised this mere Nerf gun to actually this Little did they know I have disguised this M4A1 to look like a Nerf gun. Little does it know it fires actual live rounds. Allow me to introduce myself, you dear peasant. Would you like to die? Oh, no? Too bad. Problem fucking solved.
Realizing I didn't want to get any closer to that person, I called out, "You're on private property. I'm gonna call the cops if you don't leave." And I saw the person eerily quickly walk away. I theorized it was the Airbnb owner, but obviously that was a stretch and I didn't really know what to actually think. The night following, I was in my bed on my laptop watching Breaking Bad again before going to bed. I think I watched 2 episodes, so I was doing this for about an hour and a half. I didn't hear any noises in the house, though I was definitely giving thought to that encounter from earlier while watching the show. When I finally turned off the light in the room and tried to fall asleep, within 10 seconds, there was a click sound again, muffled from the inside of the closet. I looked at the closet door, which was open just a crack. Then, a pretty natural response, I sprang off the bed, still in my PJs, and ran to the car. I sat in the driveway with the car running, and I called 911. I stared at the house as I spoke to the dispatcher, waiting to see if someone would come out, because all of my stuff was still in there. A police car arrived, and upon entering the house, we did a quick investigation of the house together. It was very small with not many places to hide. Conclusively, I still packed my stuff and left that place that night for a nearby hotel. I contacted both Airbnb and the host, and I was only able to get a partial refund for my stay. I still think it may have been the host of the Airbnb. I mean, who else would have access to the house?
Exactly.
There were no signs of forced entry, which leads me to believe whoever it was may have had a key. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was a stranger who snuck in at an opportune time.
Yeah. Nah.
An impulse. An electrical force.
An impulse to suck my nards, you fucking prostitute. Okay, let's see what you got, bro.
This happened in the summer, and I believe I was about 12 at the time. I was staying in a hotel in a fairly
12.
large city with my mom and my younger brother. We were visiting other extended family, but chose not to stay in their house. My brother is younger than me by a decent amount, so I was usually told to keep an eye on him. On the day we arrived, my mom told me to do just that while she checked us in and received our room card. So, my brother and I sat down on a couch in the lobby and relaxed a little bit. While we were sitting, a man in about his mid-40s walked into the hotel. The couch was facing the hotel doors, so I got a good look at him. I remember that he was very average looking. Describing his features in detail could generate several different images. The guy comes in and sits on the couch opposite ours. I didn't think anything of it until I realized that he didn't go up to the counter first. He just came in and sat down. It made me feel a little uncomfortable.
Okay, I would be going like, okay, this man has not come here to check in, but merely to sit down. Maybe he's been on a jog. Wait, no, his clothing would tell me otherwise. Loads 9mm with malicious intent. Get the fuck out of here, mate.
Maybe I was being a bit paranoid, but I thought he might have followed us in. Thankfully, my mom called us over and told us that our room was ready. We left the lobby and went to our room. Shortly afterwards, we left the hotel to go meet family. I forgot about the man for the rest of the day. We returned at about 7, and my mom told us that we could go swimming in the hotel pool. We all went to our room, changed, and went to the pool. A few minutes after we got into the water, the same man from before walked in and sat down. He was wearing jeans and a sweater, so he definitely wasn't going swimming. Again, we didn't think much of it until I could see that my mom was visibly worried. She pointed him out to me, and she said that if he didn't leave within 5 minutes, we needed to go back to our rooms. 5 minutes passed and he was still there, so we got our things and left. By then, it was close to 8 o'clock. We had brought a rented movie to watch, so we planned to watch that and go straight to bed. I noticed that my mom was a little on edge because of the man who had been watching us, and I got a little more worried myself, too. Halfway through the movie, my mom got up to get into the shower. While she was in there, someone knocked on the door and said, "Housekeeping." I thought it was weird that the cleaning staff would come this late, but we needed another towel, so I answered the door.
You fucking inbred child. Oh my god, you don't open a fucking... Right. Housekeeping generally only ever does housekeeping when people are out of the bedroom or nobody's... I'm not tired. I don't know why I'm yawning.
I wish I hadn't been so stupid. There was the same creepy man. He gave me a smile and a little wave. I just stood there, kind of motionless. My mind automatically went to the worst possible situation. Kidnapping, rape, torture, etc. I heard the water in the shower turn off. He stood there as well for a moment, and then he spoke. "How was your swim?" At that moment, my mom came out of the shower, saw the man at the door, pulled me back, and slammed the door. She locked it. Then she called the front desk from our hotel phone to report the guy. I told her to just call the police, but she didn't listen. She then requested we switch rooms. I then heard footsteps stomping down the hallway away from our room. Thankfully, the guy had left. After that, we switched hotel rooms and didn't see the guy again during our stay.
Creep. Mate, that probably would have happened if he had got you.
Have you ever gotten an uneasy feeling staying in a hotel room, especially by yourself? Likely not, and I also doubt you've ever been in a hotel room by yourself. But when I was a kid, I always got scared sleeping in hotel rooms. I would always keep looking back at the dark corners of the room every 20 seconds, thinking there would be somebody standing there. My fear not only drove me crazy, it drove my parents crazy, as I would always insist that I would sleep between them until I was around 9 or 10 years old. Anyway, eventually I had to grow up, or at least give off the impression, and started sleeping in my own bed or sharing the bed with my sister. Now I'm 24 years old, living on my own, and have to take a lot of business-related trips for my job.
Oh, brilliant. That's just a brilliant job.
On one particular out-of-town trip, I was staying at a Comfort Inn in North Carolina, with all the expenses paid by my job, of course. I was in the area for a meeting with an office in a different town, and the inn was my home for the night. It was across the street from some big car dealership. That's all I remember about the surroundings.
Crap.
Anyway, I was off the next day, so I could look forward to just relaxing in the hotel and watching a couple movies.
Nah.
I was ironically watching the first Saw movie. I swear, during the scene where Adam was hearing sounds in his apartment, my childhood paranoia started to come back for a bit, as I thought I heard little crackling type noises coming from inside the closet. Being 24, I told myself that I had to get over this nonsensical childish fear. I simply raised the volume on the movie and tried to ignore it. At the same time, I popped 2 sleeping pills into my mouth so that I'd be wiped out by the time the movie was over. Eventually, I flipped off the TV and rolled over onto my side to finally get some shut-eye. That was when the crackling noises became apparent again. It wasn't constant or anything.
And that's it, my friends. It's called a red flag. Thank you, everyone. Good night, and I will peace off.
It was just like once every minute or so I'd hear this crackling type noise that I just can't describe coming from the closet. It wasn't happening too frequently to really bother me, and the sleeping pills were knocking me out at that point, so I was out within like 10 minutes. The next thing I remember, I woke to the sound of cloth being rustled around. I sprang to an upright position, but it was literally too dark to even see within a few feet in front of me. After I flipped on the bedside light,
Hi!
there I saw somebody dressed in all black with a hood over his head, probably 6'5", 250 pounds, rummaging through my bag. I screamed at the top of my lungs, and in response, he fled the room. He had stolen my wallet and my watch, but he had also created a lasting memory that only digs deeper into a very large childhood fear of mine. I have never heard a story about anything like this on the news or anything, so for something like this to happen to a person like me, somebody who had such an odd, specific fear as a child, was simply catastrophic to me.
Oh my god, what is it with ads fucking nailing me? But yeah, I will say, that is terrifying. Like, it is, like, specifically, like, God just tried, hey, you know what would be a funny joke? If I just traumatise this person. And that's why I don't...
When I was 17, I started to develop some beef with my dad, who's a huge hothead. Tensions would grow worse through the years, and it got to the point that I would commonly have to leave for the night after getting into huge fights with my dad about personal things that I won't talk about. Sometimes I would stay at a friend's house or check into a hotel. It was May 9th, 2015. I was 21 years old, and after another huge scene back at home with my dad, I had to get out of there for my own good. I checked into a nearby hotel, the Quality Inn and Suites. It was literally half a mile from my house. I'd be throwing away a little less than $100 for it, but I had nowhere else to go. It was early this time around. Usually these outbursts happen around nighttime. It was like 4 o'clock, so I decided to just hang out by the outdoor pool and clear my head. It was funny, I was the only one around in this hotel. The pool was empty, the hallways were empty, even the lobby was empty, except for, of course, the desk worker. Then again, it was only May, and it wasn't like we lived in some huge vacation destination of a town. My room was in the middle of the hall on the 2nd floor. I had no idea why they'd given me that room, since it seemed like I was one of the only few people staying in the hotel. I hung out in my room after the pool for a bit. That's when there was a very light tapping on the door. I waited for someone to yell housekeeping, but they never did. Therefore, I ignored it. And to my surprise, even though I had the Do Not Disturb sign on the door handle, I heard the beep of the lock on the door, and then I heard the door slowly opening. I called out, no thank you, not right now. I couldn't see the employee at the door because there was a wall that blocked the view of the door from the bed. There was a pause, and I repeated myself, growing a bit curious. Suddenly, the door slammed shut. It actually startled me. I got up to actually go follow them and tell them that that was rude. When I stepped into the hall, I looked to my right. Nobody. I looked to my left, and at the end of the hall, I saw the right leg of a woman turning the left corner further down the hall before disappearing. How did she get there so fast, I wondered. I ran down to the end of the hall, and that's when I heard another door closing. When I turned the corner, nobody. Just maybe 20 closed, unoccupied hotel doors. I was so confused and honestly a bit freaked out. I went down to the front desk to complain about the rude employee. The woman at the counter said that must be Rosa. She said she would question her about slamming the door later on. I thanked the woman and then went out to eat at the nearby TGI Fridays down the road. When I got back to the room, I was on the phone talking to my mom, who said that I shouldn't come back because my dad was still super pissed. I entered my room and told her how depressed I was with all this fighting bullshit, and she understood. When I hung up, it was only 8 o'clock. I wanted the night to be over. I brushed my teeth, watched a little TV, and went to sleep at around 9 o'clock. I awoke to a noise. At first, I didn't know what it was. I rubbed my eyes, sat up, and listened. There was somebody standing at the left edge of my bed, towering over me. I screamed and felt like throwing up at the same time. It was a dreadful, horrifying feeling. The person then grabbed around my throat and started repeating the words, "You piece of shit." It was an older woman with a weak grip. I was able to escape easily. I ran to the door of the room. I heard her following me, but she stopped at the door when I ran down the halls to the front desk. The woman at the front desk admitted that one of the employees had lost one of her master keys that had access to all of the rooms in the hotel. Something they were obligated to report to the head of the hotel. I was furious. Of course, I got a refund, gave some info to the cops, and then went home that night, where my dad actually showed something close to sympathy after I explained what happened. Ever since, I've actually never had to leave the house for the night, and I hope it stays that way. Oh yeah, and I have absolutely no idea whatever became of that crazy nutcase woman that tried to kill me.
Well, for the third story, I'll tell you what happened. Your dad had a moment of So when my dad was younger and living with his parents, there was this moment where he cracked his head open. I can't remember the exact details, but he went running to his house, and as soon as he was seen by his dad, and my dad was obviously crying like he would be, and his dad was gonna, "Oh, what's the problem?" As in, like, stop your bitchy complaining. And basically, my dad's dad basically felt very, very shitty ever since then. But yeah, this kid's dad had a Morris Kelso moment. Bub. Yeah. Apparently there's somebody who animates these stories from Mr. Nightmare. I can't remember what the channel was called, but MLG said that it was worth a look at, but I'll have to do that next video. It's me, Steve.
During a road trip, I was passing through Ohio. It was around that time I was starting to get sleepy.
What to do when entering Ohio? Leave. Literally every state fucking hates Ohio.
Behind the wheel, so I stopped in this small town called Xenia. I looked for a hotel or motel and found this place called Xenia Country Inn. It looked a little run down, but so did this whole town if I'm being honest. Plus, all I needed was a night's sleep. Nothing
Dude,
fancy.
it's
So I
Ohio.
went to the little
Just
front office,
park
which was
your
on the
car
corner
somewhere,
of
you'll
one
be
of the
fine.
2 buildings to the motel. There was an
Affordable,
old man
like...
sitting there reading the paper. It was hot in there, and there was a loud buzzing sound from this tabletop fan. I asked for a room, and the man finally looked up from his paper without greeting me and said 65. I assumed he meant $65 for the room, so I handed him my credit card. I asked if it's possible to get a corner room, and he simply said no. The customer service here was clearly not something included in the price. The man handed me this old-fashioned key on an otherwise blank key ring. They still didn't use key cards at this place. I walked across the parking lot to my room. The door was actually hard to unlock. I had to shimmy the key a little just to get it to finally turn. Before walking in, I looked around the lot.
Mate, just be grateful your fucking rear door lock opens. Mate, the fucking back door we have, the key is so shitty it barely even serves its one purpose anymore.
There were only 2 other cars in the parking lot. It was a ghost town. I stepped into the room, and it smelled like a mix of cotton and vomit. I wondered if I should go back and ask for a different room, but I realized by the look of this place, all the rooms probably smelled. The room was small, and had a blue, dirty, worn-out looking carpet, a couch, a small coffee table, and a bed. I shut the door and tried to lock it, but I was having trouble. More trouble than I did unlocking it. After about 30 seconds of shimmying and almost popping a blood vessel trying to unlock it, I felt I may have broken it. But when I tried opening the door, it wouldn't open. So even though the door wasn't fully locked, as long as the door wouldn't open, that's all that mattered, I figured. I crawled up in the bed, and I heard all the old
I'm watching
squeaks,
disturbing, apparent true stories.
I tried putting on the TV,
Not all of them
of course,
sound
the
like,
remote didn't work.
regardless
So I
whether
just
they're true or
crawled under the
fake, man,
covers and tried
they're
to
pretty
get to sleep.
scary.
Then it happened. I nearly jumped out of my own skin, and there was one loud thump at the window. I looked at the guy standing outside of it, and he started talking, sounding all hurt and in need of help. He was saying, "Hey, please let me in. I hurt myself bad. I need help." And he definitely saw me in that bed. I yelled back to go to the front desk. He wouldn't stop, though. There was no way I was opening that door. I had a feeling he was acting, and this was a trap. Eventually, after ignoring him for long enough, he left. I turned to check and confirm, and he was gone. I hadn't realized how truly unsafe this area was. I had to get up and check the lock on the door just to be safe and make sure the door wouldn't open. I gave the door a couple good pulls, and it didn't open. I then closed the curtains in front of the 2 windows so that he couldn't come back and look in at me again. That shook me up a bit, but the nerves calmed within half an hour, and I was able to fall into a half sleep not too long after. I started having this weird dream where I was in a closed supermarket running from the manager who was chasing me, and at some point during the dream, these clicking sounds started taking over, to the point that my whole dream shifted to incorporate these sounds. And then with that, I was awake. The room was cold for some reason. Then I looked down and realized the blanket was pulled off of me. I sat up to pull it back over me, but then I saw at the foot of the bed.
You saw Cristiano Ronaldo shaking his hand with some black dude, because why the fuck not? I don't know, I was scared, I just thought I might end the tension.
There was this tall figure looming over me. Before I could scream, he went shh and told me not to move. He told me he wouldn't hurt me if I didn't make any movements or sounds. Then he asked me where my wallet was. I told him in my jeans pocket on the floor. All I saw was this figure towering over me in the bed, moving away from the foot of the bed to my jeans on the floor.
I would have said, dude, I'm from Ohio. I'm broke as balls, mate.
I heard him rustling with the jeans, digging through the pocket until he found it. Then he asked what else I had in there. I was just taking a road trip. With that, he didn't say another word and left. I ran to try and relock the door as soon as he left, having the same trouble as earlier. I then called the police, but they were of no immediate assistance. We went to the guy at the front desk, who played back the video footage caught. However, the guy who entered the room was wearing a face mask and a hat, hiding all of his features. I got my money back and left. Thank God I didn't have much cash in my wallet. I canceled all my cards and slept in my car. I learned my lesson, never to stop at a sketchy motel.
No, just generally never go to Ohio. But yeah. Mate, you want to use my credit card? Denied! Little Mads. What kind of fucking name is that?
Early last year, my father and I traveled down to do some charity work in a small town that was flooded from recent rainfall. We had gathered a truckload full of donated clothes and items to help families get back on their feet. The first night, we stayed in a hotel that had a perfect view of the ocean. That night, my dad and I stayed up watching the Blair Witch Project on my laptop using the hotel's free Wi-Fi. Let's just say I didn't get much sleep. The next night,
Wonder
my
why.
mom booked us a room at a motel, seeing as we didn't expect to stay a second night. It was 100 meters away from a trailer park, and the property overlooked a large lake. The area was tucked away from the public and was surrounded by trees. My mom claimed that everywhere else was fully booked, so we had no other options. We met the two managers who ran and lived at the motel. There was an old lady who was sweet and informed us about everything we needed to know, including the fact that the lake hadn't been full for 20 years. Her husband, however, looked like he was taken straight from a serial killer movie. Him being the serial killer. He never spoke a word to us. He never smiled. His wrinkles melted on his face, and he had dark rings around his eyes. That's when my dad and I started to have an uneasy feeling about that place. The rest of the day went by in a blur, so my dad and I went out for pizza and a movie afterward to avoid going back to that place as much as possible. Once we arrived back at the motel, it was around 8 p.m., and it was completely dark. As we went to the back of the truck to get our luggage, we found a bag of children's clothes hidden underneath a spare tire. We began to walk the bag over to the trailer park, thinking that a family may get good use out of it, when I felt the sudden urge to go back to the motel, seeing as we watched a scary movie last night, coincidentally about teenagers encountering a witch in the woods. We went to the front desk with the bag and asked the creepy old manager if we could leave it with him to donate to the trailer park, seeing as they were neighbors and we had to leave early in the morning to go back home. His eyes widened and he shook his head while saying, "No, there's no way in hell. I refuse to go there." Then he walked off. Dad and I just looked at each other, saying with our eyes, "What the hell just happened?" We then decided to drop it off in the charity bin back home. We went to sleep once we had all our showers, which was about an hour or so later.
Okay, when you ask somebody to do something and they freak the wig out, that's when you normally get a red flag and go like, yo, I don't like this anymore.
I specifically remember waking up at 2:17 a.m. because of Dad's snoring. I stayed up reading a book on my phone, my body faced towards the door. I also remember hearing cars speeding up and down the driveway that night. I let the thought slide, thinking it was just some guys goofing off. That assumption later vanished after I noticed a bright blue light appear through the cracks on the top and bottom part of the door, and silent whispers coming from the other side that I was unable to decipher. I was too scared to even move. I was frozen in the spot. My heart was beating in my throat and my hands were shaking, and I mean literally shaking. I heard the door handle begin to rattle, and that's when I knew that this wasn't going to end well. The light then disappeared, followed by complete and utter silence. I was still frozen in that spot for another 3 minutes, which felt like hours, before I woke up to my dad and told him everything that had happened. He then laughed and explained to me that earlier in the night he couldn't sleep due to hearing scratches in the walls right beside our bed. I was confused and didn't believe him until he put his finger to his lips while saying, "Shh, do you hear that?" Everything went silent until I heard brief scratches coming from our bed frame. I shot out of the bed and told Dad that we needed to leave, so we left the room key on the bed while sneaking off to the truck. We ended up leaving at 2:32 a.m. Never will I ever go near that motel ever again.
Nah, mate, nah. Nate Paul.
Long story short, my ex-girlfriend and I had a pretty explosive relationship, and we didn't get along very often. We were on this weekend trip in the mountains just to go sightseeing and hiking because we thought it would be good for us. But shit hit the fan in the hotel room on the second night, and basically I couldn't sleep in the same room as her. Instead of getting another hotel room for myself for like $150, I drove literally down the road to a motel and stopped there to stay for a fraction of the price. My logic was, if I left for the night and gave her time to cool off, maybe things would be better by morning. I got a room for, I'm not lying, $50 for the night. When I was walking towards my room, the room next door was wide open. As I passed, I looked inside, and it was lit up by the blue glow of the TV screen. Though from the angle I was at, I could not see what was on the screen. I didn't see anyone inside, but then again, I didn't stop to look like a weirdo. I proceeded to my room. It was a modest, normal-looking motel room for the price. Just a queen-size bed with a typical tacky floral bed cover, a TV, and a sofa. I wasn't really tired, so I just laid with the TV on and played games on my phone for a while. There was some weird noise from what I thought was coming from the TV, so I turned it off. But the noise persisted. It wasn't the TV. So I got up and listened, and realized it was coming from the room next door. I couldn't tell if it was a fighting couple, if it was the TV from next door, or if it was the sound of someone dying. It was just incredibly muffled. At this point, I had nothing else to do but to try and go to sleep. But then there was a banging on the wall separating the two rooms. I got up and went closer to the wall, and it happened again. It was without a doubt someone on the other side pounding on it with their fist. Why were they doing this? I can't say I wasn't a little freaked out, but I had to just be a man and confront them. I went over next door. Surprisingly, the door to the room was still open, and the TV was still on, but there was no sound. I knocked on the open door, asking if there was a problem or if someone needed help. There was no response. I could even see that the bathroom door was open and the light was off. I stepped into the room slowly, cautiously.
And here's where a sane person would have done. Call the cops as soon as you fucking see there's a door open and there's banging. That's literally murder scene 101.
When I cleared the wall, blocking the view of the sofa and the bed, and still saw nobody, I just stood there all confused like. I went closer to the TV to look at what exactly was on the screen. It was just a blank blue screen. But there was a sticky note on the screen. It had writing on it. I picked it off the screen. It said, "Check under the bed." I dropped the note and ran out of the room, slamming.
No, 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 no. I do not play sicko games with a psychopath. You fucking nut. Yes, puts a sticky note on a TV and somebody literally starts up fucking horror movie. Yes. Look under the bed. No!
The door. I ran back to my room and made sure to double lock the door with the chain lock. I crawled into bed and texted my girlfriend telling her what just happened and that I was freaking out. She called me immediately and I started telling her over the phone. As I was mid-explaining it, there were more bangs on the motel room wall. She heard it clearly because I put it on speaker. I started freaking out, and she told me to run to my car or to the front desk. I chose to run to the front desk so I could get my money back. I told the guy at the front desk that he should go to the room next to mine and kick the person out, but he looked at me and laughed and said that there was no one staying on either side of that room. He seemed to know immediately that they were both vacant. I told him he needs to check it out and that I needed my money back. So he went with me with the key to the room in his hand and unlocked the door. But now the TV was off and the room was dark. He walked inside and checked under the bed as the note had said. Even the post-it note that I dropped on the floor was gone. He refused to refund me, but it was $50. I didn't care. I left and went back to the hotel to my girlfriend and was glad to hug her and sleep in the same bed as her.
No.
I don't know what I witnessed in that motel room. I don't know who or what was under that bed, and I don't want to know.
Mate, you did the right thing. You legged it. You just got out of there, mate. Hell nah, mate. That was fucking scary. I would have shitted myself. I generally would have shit. I am proud to admit that. I would have shitted myself.
An impulse.
Of being gay, you fucking dicks. Fuck you. Neil Pruitt.
This happened in the summer, and I believe I was about 12 at the time. I was staying in a hotel in a fairly large city with my mom and my younger brother.
I've already watched this one. Okay. Me and the boys, when we see one of our mates fucking swallowing a hot dog whole. I'm sorry, what the fuck? That's not even scary. I ain't no bitch. I'll hitchhike even if it means I have to.
So this was told to me by an old family friend, Nikki, numerous times as a kid growing up, as one of those life advice stories to keep in mind through the years. And to her credit, I've never forgotten it. Whenever anything associated with hitchhiking comes up, it always springs to mind, and probably always will. Even makes me a bit ill whenever I think about it, actually. So Nikki, who grew up at the same time as my dad, so this was about early 80s, I believe, she was a young woman in her mid-20s. She's one of those real kind-hearted souls, always willing to help another out in a time of need, you know? And I can't imagine her being anything other than that when she was younger, so I totally see her doing this too. So driving into the city, which was about a 2-hour drive from town, she saw a man walking down the side of the road. As she neared, he turned and, in typical hitchhiker manner, stuck out the old arm and thumb. Nikki, bless her heart, pulled over and asked him if he needed any help. She told me he was really polite, if not a bit shy, when he asked for a lift into the city. Nikki gave a smile and popped open the passenger door for the guy, who then tossed his bag into the back seat and buckled up for the ride.
See, this is why I will never be able to hitchhike, like, because you don't know anything. You don't know absolutely anything about the person that you're letting into your car.
Ahead. They talked pleasantly for most of the trip, about friends, the news, etc. You know, happy small talk. She felt that they were getting along very well, and even bought him dinner at the pit stop a little over halfway there.
Wow.
She says he seemed really flustered and awkward when she paid, but one of the things they talked about was money, and how he was pretty damn strapped for cash, which was why he was hitchhiking in the first place. But he eventually relented, and they went on their way. As soon as they got into the city, he thanked her profusely for the ride and the food, and asked to be dropped off once they hit downtown. Before getting out, he asked for Nikki's phone number so he could contact her one day and maybe catch up. Thrilled at the prospect of knowing how her new friend was faring, Nikki wrote it down for him and drove off with the warm feeling of having...
And that was your mistake. You shouldn't have done that, you fucking idiot. But you're too nice and you wouldn't have known. Fuck.
done a good deed. Now, I'm sorry if you were expecting something creepy to have happened by now, but I think this is what freaked me out so much as a kid. How nice everything seemed to have worked out. Nikki gets this crease in her forehead and a funny look in her eye when she tells me this next part. How a week later she got a phone call from the same man she had picked up. He didn't let her get a word in edgewise after hello, and told her that she should thank God that she was raised so nice. Because when he first got in the car, he was planning on raping and murdering her once they got to that pit stop. That he was going to steal that car and dump her body in a ditch further down the road and go on his merry way. But after she talked with him so kindly and even treated him to dinner, with a smile on her face, he couldn't bring himself to do it. He didn't think that...
Well, unfortunately, you kind, ugly fuck, I have something called fuck youism, which basically ruins your life just by existing. So, I'm sorry if your plan went to shit. Feel free to go to the cops and tell the fact that you were a murderer, you fucking sick fuck.
He could live with himself after doing that to such a nice lady. The man's final words on the phone were, "Please, Nikki, please, never ever pick up another hitchhiker." Then he hung up the phone. Nikki never got a call from him again. When she tried redialing the number, she got a payphone. And so, I've learned one important thing from this story. That I'm going to take that man's advice and never, ever pick up a hitchhiker.
As scary and as wrong as... That's concerning. Like... Man tried to scare Nikki... Wow. Terrifying. I hate getting fucking ads. Piss off. But can we just appreciate how, in a sort of sick-ass way, this man actually was kind of doing a good thing? Like, this guy could have probably done that, but he didn't. I don't know. Very concerning.
The Wrong Hitchhiker by Nathan Bartholomew. I've learned one thing from my one and only experience picking up a hitchhiker. Don't pick up a hitchhiker. It was a Saturday night, probably around 1 in the morning. I was driving down the 542 in New Jersey.
Hitchhikers IRL. Psychotic maniacs who will try and shank you. Hitchhikers in the movies. Probably the main character or something like that. Unless it's a horror movie, which is when they will try and shank you as well.
A route I commonly took to get into town. It was a long stretch of nothing but woods on either side with the occasional residence. I was on my way back home from town, and as usual at this time of night around our quiet old town, there was not a single other car on the road. I turned on the off-road lights on my Jeep to have optimal vision on the unlit highway, which allowed...
Optimal vision on the highway, which allowed me to be gay. Sorry, his voice is so monotone, I can take the piss out of it very easily.
...me to spot somebody far down the road, just...
Far down my asshole is...
standing at the side. As I got closer, I saw him raise his arm up and stick up his thumb. He was trying to hitch a ride.
Stick up his thumb in, then lower it up into his asshole and shank himself sideways. I shouldn't be doing this.
My heart started racing. I had no idea if I should stop or not. I slowed down just to get a better look at the guy, first of all. He seemed like a younger man, maybe 28. He had on a light gray hoodie with the hood over his head and blue denim jeans. The time to make a decision.
Nah, I'm sorry, mate, but the only reason I would ever allow somebody to get hitchhiked is if they were wearing like an army jacket. Because honestly, you never know.
Was immediate, and with a lack of my better judgment in the heat of the moment, I came to a stop, rolled down the window, and asked, "Where are you heading to, friend?" "Just up the road," he said in a deep, quiet tone.
And I would have said, well, you can keep on walking, mate. Just drives off at Mach 1. I don't know, I was trying to do like some sort of initial D song, but it just fucked.
"Hop in," I called out the window. He opened the door to my Jeep and stepped inside slowly. Jeep Wranglers have very tight seals on the doors, so when he tried to close the door the first time, it didn't shut. I politely said, "Oh, the door didn't shut. Just open and slam it shut real hard. These doors are hard to close." The body language he was giving off in response was unsettling. About 3 seconds after I had finished my sentence, he looked at me, then turned his head slowly to the right, and again waited 3 or 4 more seconds before finally opening the door and then slamming it back shut. By the way this guy was moving, I already regretted my decision to let him in. I put my foot on the gas and we started moving along the road. The speed limit on this road was 55, but I was going 75 just to get the guy to his destination quicker. "So, how far did you say you're going?" There was an awkward gap of silence before he replied with, "Just a few miles up."
You said just down the road, mate. The fuck?
I wanted to turn the radio on to kill this awkward and downright creepy silence, but something in my head told me not to for whatever reason. Suddenly, I could see just through the corner of my eye that the man had turned his head and was staring in my direction. At this point, I was telling myself that I needed to get this guy out of my car. For a good mile, I felt...
Okay, we're talking about American, we're talking about an American Jeep, are we not? then why is the steering wheel on the left-hand fucking side? It's like the driver who's telling the story is being the creepy fuck. Mate, I know you got confused with stories, but you need to make sure that the illustration works.
I felt his gaze just hitting me like a brick, and all the while I tried my best not to look back. Finally, he turned his head the other way and said, "You know, I've been wondering for the longest time if it's just worth it to end it all." I looked at him in confusion. He dug his hand into his pocket and said, "I've been carrying this knife with me for the past few weeks, wondering when the right time would come." He pulled out a big red knife from his pocket, and at that instant I felt like my stomach had dropped out of my body. I told him to put the knife away immediately. He told me in a calm, emotionless voice, "Pull over next to that sign." I did what he said, coming to a stop next to a speed limit sign.
Mate, if doors could be opened from like the driver, so you know how some windows can be opened like from the driver, I would basically do that sort of thing and then basically just Tokyo drift him out of it, making him hit the passenger side door and then just throw him out. Go like, "Fuck you, bitch!" and then just run him over. Problem solved.
Followed still haunts me. He began to slit his forearm next to 3 other scars from previous assumed self-inflicted cuts and let out a disturbing moan. I managed to choke out the words, "You need to get out of my car right now, buddy." He looked at me again and said, "Get out of the car. I want to show you something." I told him no, and he raised his knife up closer to me as an obvious threat.
Okay, this is what I would have done. I would have gone like, okay, you out first, buddy, I'll follow you. As soon as he gets out of the car, gas, I'm gonna fuck it ass. Ah!
Just get out for a second. There's something I want to show you behind that sign.
No.
I knew my life was on the line and I had to be smart. I said, "Yeah, okay, man. Let's go." I opened the door to my Jeep, making a point of leaving it open, raised my hands in the air and backed away slowly from the door. He too left the car and started walking over to my side. At the exact moment that he was directly behind the car, I jumped back in, threw it into drive, and floored it down the road.
Adelaide.
I got back home within 10 minutes, still breathing heavily and wanting to throw up. This was the scariest thing that has ever happened to me, and I urge everybody and anybody that if you by some chance see a hitchhiker on a dead road at some odd hours of the night, do not take any course of action other than speeding right past them.
On it, mate. I will. And count on me, I ain't.
3 months after I turned 16 in 2005, I got my first car, a '99 Toyota Camry. On a warm Saturday night, when my friend Alex invited me over to one of his friend's big parties, I knew I wouldn't be in a condition to drive the Camry home afterward. So we carpooled with Alex's girlfriend, Brianna. We lived in the countryside of Virginia, meaning less big parties. Meaning when there was a big party, it was a huge deal and everyone would go. We lived about 5 to 10 minutes away from this kid's house. I knew where he lived as I was acquainted with him, but not exactly friends. The whole ride there, we took the same 2-lane highway type road through the woods, and this kid's house was actually on this road further down. At certain points on this road, there were a few houses on either side, and then it would just go back to being a long, empty highway again. The house was tiny, like a lot of houses around the area, but the party was held outside anyways, since its closest neighbors were relatively far away, and noise wasn't an issue. I'll skip most of the party up until the point that Brianna, who was supposed to be our designated driver, had to suddenly leave for a small family emergency. Alex said it was fine and that we'd find a ride home. Well, fast forward another few hours and another few drinks, and I could barely even walk straight. I checked my watch, and it was like 2 in the morning. I figured it was time to go. I started looking for Alex, but...
Mate, at this point, you want to do the complete opposite and stay. Just pass out on the floor, and you'll be alright.
I couldn't find him anywhere. In fact, it seemed like everybody I knew had already left. I could barely even think straight, but I was still furious at the fact that Alex could have actually left without me. I asked to use the party host's phone and dialed Alex's home number. After 2 tries, I gave up and then realized I shouldn't wake his family up. So, literally not knowing what else to do, I dizzily stepped out onto the road and began walking back home. I knew this walk would take anywhere from half an hour to an hour in my condition. Maybe after 15 minutes of walking down the road, the slight shine of car headlights on the road was fading in from behind me. Jumping for joy inside, I lifted up my arm and stuck out my thumb. As the car neared, it slowed down and came to a stop right next to me. The man driving the '98 Ford Explorer rolled down the window and asked where you headed. I told him my house was just down the road and beyond a right turn, probably slurring my words beyond comprehension. He chuckled and told me to hop in. I thanked him and joyously hopped into the
Mate,
truck.
if I'm in America and some dude offers to pick me up and he has a pickup truck, I'll just say, you mind if I hop in the truck bed? No offense, mate, but I don't trust you, and you probably don't have any sort of reason to trust me, so let's just, be fair here.
I was exhausted, and I remember completely disregarding things the guy was asking me because I was so close to just passing out. And that's what happened. The memories of being in that truck turned to a fog, as I'm sure I passed out. The next thing I remember, I woke up still in the moving truck. The guy looked at me and laughed, but didn't say anything. I looked around and realized the road we were on wasn't familiar. I nervously asked, where are we going? He then said, so what were you doing out this late anyway? As the man answered my very straightforward question with another irrelevant question, the sobering reality of the situation hit me.
Jump out of the car.
You can let me out anywhere, I told the man. The man responded with a firm no. I felt like throwing up as he said that. No, I really actually felt like I was going to throw up.
Do it on him!
To gag as I felt.
Dude! You have a strength there. Just puke on this man, then jump out and leg it.
I felt more and more nauseous by the second. The man took his eyes off the road to look at me, and that's when I thought of the perfect distraction. I turned in his direction as I continued to gag, and he started to kind of lean away and slow down the car. Thankfully, I drank as much as I did, because I finally threw up and made a point of doing it all over the man's lap.
Yes!
The man yelled in frustration and stopped the car, and that's when I took it upon myself to run for my life into the woods and duck behind a few bushes. The man came following into the woods with a flashlight, and on 2 separate occasions, he shined the light straight over me without noticing. Eventually, I heard his footsteps walk even further into the woods past me. That was when I ran back to his truck, but unfortunately, he was smart enough to lock it. By some miracle, I saw another car approaching in the distance, and I ran out into the middle of the street, waving my arms like a lunatic. The car tried to avoid me, but I wouldn't let it. They were forced to stop, and I yelled at them to help me before they came back. Once I told them that I was kidnapped by the man who was driving that Ford Explorer, the driver agreed to give me a lift.
Thank fuck.
Not to the police station or anything, but to my house. I made it back safely, where I couldn't thank the driver enough. I immediately woke up my parents and told them. My dad wanted to know if I got his tag number, and then I felt like punching myself in the face. I failed to get the simplest information from the guy that would have allowed me to actually properly report him. All I knew was that he drove a faded blue '99 Ford Explorer. I made sure to give Alex a piece of my mind, and part of me always held a grudge against him ever since, just for abandoning me at a party without telling me. I haven't seen him in 4 years now, however, and this was actually the first time I even thought about this incident for almost a year now. As time goes on, even the worst of memories may start to fade, but after writing this to share with the internet, it's once again fresh in my mind.
Thank you so much for watching, and we hope you enjoyed. But be sure to keep those lights off and tune into the video that Mr. Nightmare and I have done on my channel about horrific hitchhiking, murders, You can either click on screen now or in the description below to watch that video, and be sure to subscribe while you're there, because you won't want to miss what's next.
Bite me. Suck my dick, you tiny whore. Oh, and I can't skip it. Nope. I'm not gonna say something offensive. No. Now I am. Fuck off, you black man. I don't care if that was racist or anything. Fucking piss off. Content.
I was house sitting for my grandma one weekend while she went to Florida with some of her church friends. I was sleeping in the guest bedroom next to her room. The guest bedroom always had 2 twin beds inside of it that my brother and I would sleep in when we had sleepovers at our house. I took the bed next to the window, but before getting into bed, I checked all the doors, making sure they were locked. When I did get into bed, it was early, and I didn't actually go to sleep for a while. There wasn't much to do at my grandma's house. I was just on my phone for an hour or two, watching videos, texting people, whatever. That's when I thought I could start hearing someone's voice outside. It sounded like a woman's voice, saying hello. I left the bedroom and inched my way closer to the front door, moving slow because I was trying to listen.
Hello.
It was a woman's voice, just going hello like every 10 seconds. As I got closer to the front door, I realized that's where it seemed to be coming from. My grandma's door doesn't have a peephole, but the windows in her dining room gave a clear view of the front porch, so I went over to that window to attempt to get a view of who was out there. I tried peeking my head in between the plastic blinds without making it obvious, but I guess I didn't do a good job of that, because when I looked, I did see a woman on my grandma's stoop, and she was looking right at me, as if she knew I was going to be looking through those blinds. Once again, she said hello, with some freakish smile on her face. This woman was older, but don't picture her as some innocent-looking, small old lady. She looked like she was maybe late 50s, early 60s, and something about her face just skeeved me out. I moved away from the window and thought, maybe it was one of my grandma's friends. It was midnight, though. Why would anyone come to the door this late?
Exactly.
Why didn't she knock or ring the bell?
Exactly.
Why was she just standing out there going hello over and over?
Because she's a
I was
psychopath.
genuinely unsettled. I just went back to the guest bedroom and shut the door.
Exactly.
Now with the door shut as opposed to before, I couldn't hear that woman anymore. Maybe it was that, or she just decided to leave. I started texting everyone about it. My sisters, my friends, telling them how bizarre it was. But a good amount of time passed in silence, and I was starting to calm down. My sisters were telling me to call Grandma, but there was a 0% chance she was awake. She barely ever even checked her cell phone anyway.
True.
Just like that, something broke the silence.
Nah.
A banging at the window.
Nah.
Not a knocking or tapping, banging. I felt that fierce pain in my chest area as my body entered that fight or flight mode. Shortly after the banging stopped, I heard that familiar voice say hello. With that boost of adrenaline, I guess I had the extra confidence to grab the blinds and push it up. There I was, face to face with this horrifying older lady, with only a thin layer of glass between us. I screamed at her smiling, gross face and calling the cops.
Okay, right. I'm gonna be honest here. If some bitch is at my window, yes, this window of this bedroom, which is up a floor, and some bitch is smiling at me, I'm saying, first of all, how the fuck are you up here? Second of all, get the fuck out of here, Spider-Man. Nobody called you.
blind back down and ran back outside to the living room. I looked around the house, then ran upstairs to box myself into the upstairs guest bedroom.
Adelaide.
I didn't want to actually call the cops. I don't know why. I wanted to just wait it out. I crawled into the bed in the upstairs guest bedroom and tucked myself under the covers. A couple hours later, I was still awake, and I finally only then went back downstairs to look outside each window. That freaky old lady seemed to be gone. The next morning, I called my grandma and told her what happened. She started yelling into the phone, clearly panicking and distressed. She told me how a few days earlier, she was being watched in the grocery store by some woman about 10 years younger than her, who just kept smiling at her for no reason.
Nah.
I told her to calm down. I didn't entirely know whether to correlate the two or not. But when we eventually got off the phone with each other, I did have to give it a second thought. My grandma's 75, and she has lost a bit of her wits, so I do have to take some of the things she says with a grain of salt. But the way she yelled into the phone about the woman in the store really gave me the chills.
Yeah.
I still wonder if it could have been the same person.
Probably. And that's when you want to reconsider, why the fuck didn't you call the cops?
My name is Nicholas. I'm currently a freshman at Syracuse University, which doesn't exactly sit in the safest area. I just went through a breakup with my first girlfriend, so I started getting back into the online dating scene. I was using the app Hinge when I found some blonde girl named Stephanie who I really connected with. She also went to Syracuse. We both liked to read, go to the movies, we even had the same sense of humor. I suggested we go on a movie.
One thing I have noticed, if I find a girl that has the same sort of dark humour sense as me, that's when I say, nah, this ain't the girl. Because normally, whenever I find out that there is a girl with the same sort of dark humour sense as me, that's when I normally end up getting threatened to stab in the back by them.
And she said she'd love to. She told me to meet her at some specific point near campus, and she'd pick me up. So, around 9 o'clock, I waited on some corner of a normal neighborhood block, waiting for Stephanie.
That ain't no normal looking
ass neighbor. She asked me to share
neighbor.
my location with her, and so I did. A few minutes later, I saw a car turn down the street and start approaching me. Then it stopped in front of me, and the driver rolled down the window. It wasn't Stephanie, though, but some old random guy. He asked what I was doing alone out here, which was insanely weird, first of all. Then I said I was waiting for someone. He asked if I was waiting for Stephanie, and I said, yeah, how'd you know? He said he was Stephanie's father, and told me to hop in so he could give me a ride to her.
Na 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 na. Fuck you. Na 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 na. That, my friends, is called a big ass red alert, and you want to get the fuck out of there.
I took a good look at him. He looked a little old to be her father, to be honest. I'm no idiot when it comes to sketchy situations. So I said in a firm voice, why didn't you tell me you'd be picking me up? He claimed he didn't trust a random guy meeting up with his daughter, and wanted to meet me first. I took another good look at the man and didn't say anything. I simply started walking away in the opposite direction from where his car was facing.
Adelaide.
He started yelling, hey, hey, sounding surprised that I was just walking away like that. But I've heard way too many kidnapping stories to know where this could potentially go.
Adelaide.
I heard the guy's car moving, and I turned to make sure he wasn't doing a U-turn to follow me. I breathed a sigh of relief when he drove straight and turned left out of sight. I continued walking down the block towards campus. I got to the corner of the block and was just about to make a turn when I noticed what I was pretty sure to be the same car the man was driving, just parked on the side of the road with the light shut off. I briefly tried looking into the window as I passed, but the glass was tinted. I tried not making it obvious that I was suspicious and continued walking. I got a text from this so-called Stephanie person saying, why didn't you get in the car with my dad?
And I would have texted because I ain't no psychotic moron. Because I know that this is a catfish, you fucking whore. Go talk to some 15-year-old, you fucking pedo.
I ignored the text and continued walking. I kept looking back to see if the car would move. When I got to an intersection in the road, I turned right and then full-on booked it in the direction of campus.
Hello, lad.
Surprisingly, I wasn't followed. I made it back to campus out of breath and started walking to my dorm building. I felt like I heard footsteps following me, though. I thought maybe I was being paranoid, but when I heard a piece of broken glass being kicked by someone's shoe, I knew I was being tailed.
Run.
I made a point of ducking down behind a van and stopping to give me time to listen for where their footsteps were coming. They were a few cars away from me. Then I remembered. I never stopped sharing my location with Stephanie, or should I say that man. I saw him. It was that old man. He was approaching from between two cars across from me. He yelled something that I didn't fully understand, but it sounded like he said, "Come back and I'll take you to her." He had to be like 60-something. There's no way he would catch me if I sprinted. I lost him easily when I ran, and made it back to my dorm room. My roommate wasn't there, so I had no one to talk to about it. But when I lay in my bed, I got another text from that man, and it was shocking. It said, "You're a little piece of fucking shit. You're lucky you got away. I would have strangled your ugly ass." I still have the screenshot. I replied saying thanks for the threat, it's going straight to the police, and I blocked his number. I still have the conversation saved as evidence, and I plan on going to the police with it eventually. Hopefully they are able to do something about it.
Hopefully. Imagine being so fucking stupid. You say that on a fucking... Like, you've just tried to kidnap and strangle somebody, and you're stupid enough to say that. You're a fucking piece of shit. And a guy, thanks for the death threat, dipshit. You've just fucked yourself over. Good luck in prison, numbnuts. Be careful not to pick up the fucking soap when you drop it.
I had a side job as a part-time janitor at my high school over the summer. I would work sometimes days and sometimes nights, anywhere from 9 a.m. to 12 a.m., depending on how much money I needed. Oftentimes, I would be left to lock up the building when the older janitors had left. This was a time before the high school had cameras installed in every single hallway. So one night, one of my superiors, Tom, had to leave early, meaning I'd be finishing up the rest of my shift alone, and I'd be locking up for the night. He told me to text him if I need anything, as he always did, and then he left. I loved it when I was left alone, because usually I'd just do half an hour of work, and then just hang around on my phone or leave early and still get paid for the whole shift.
Mate, do you want to know what I would do if I was a fucking school janitor at this kind of school? I'd go into one of the school rooms and just go fucking... everyone does this at any sort of, like, office job if they're a security guard. Like, no, everyone would do this. But basically, get one of those wheelie chairs and just wheel yourself down a room. Oh, my back. But yeah, I'd do that.
I definitely pushed it with the things I'd get away with at that place. One of the things Tom asked me to do before leaving was bring all the extra seats in the gymnasium from the assembly down to the basement storage room. So I figured I'd do that, then just go home.
And that's when I would go... nah, sorry.
I grabbed a stack of 6 chairs and started carrying it down to the basement. The lights in the storage room.
Sorry, everyone, but kids, when they see stacked chairs for no fucking reason, I'm the king! Wait, just caught my gun before it fell.
Were very dim. It kind of sucked. The whole basement of that school wasn't exactly pretty. It felt more like a basement to a warehouse. Anyway, there were what appeared to be a bunch of art mannequins covered by paint cloths. You know, those big things that look like blankets. It seemed all of the school's art supplies were stored down here. I dropped the stack of chairs down where the rest of the chairs were stored, and went back up to the gym to get more. When I came back down with more chairs, I noticed one of the mannequins was exposed now. The blanket was removed from on top of it. I know for sure it was covered minutes earlier because it was one of the front ones.
Nah, mate, that's when you want to fuck right off. Nigerians. Yeah, sorry everyone. My flight or fight response kicked in and it said fuck the right off.
I texted Tom saying, I think someone's down in the basement. He said back, what do you mean?
Please don't tell me you texted Tom while you were still in the basement. telling somebody was still in. Please tell me you didn't do that.
And I said one of the art cloths were moved. He took a minute to respond, saying no one else should be there. Then I noticed something. The art cloth, tucked in the corner of the storage room, sitting outside of the light that was produced at the center of the room. It was covering something, surely. I started to tiptoe over to it.
Why? Why? No! Take a photo of it and run! Take a photo of it and lock the basement so they can't escape. Hopefully.
When I was a few feet away from it, I realized whatever was under that cloth was moving just ever so slightly. There was undoubtedly someone hiding under there. I ran back upstairs and locked the basement door.
Exactly.
I texted Tom saying someone is hiding under a cloth in the basement. He said call the cops, but I insisted he just come back since he only just left like 10 minutes ago. He didn't want to come back though. He told me to be a man and confront whoever was down there. So I went down to the basement again. However, the cloth was now strewn flat on the floor, and whoever was hiding under there was gone. But possibly the scariest thing was yet to happen. As I stood in the storage room, there were loud metallic thumps coming from above my head. I looked up.
Yo, that's kind of sus, bro. I'm so sorry, everyone. You have every right to unsubscribe from my channel at this point. That was bad.
And saw indents slowly forming in the large air vent above me. Someone was crawling through the main vent, then just stopped literally above me. And then bangs. Bangs like whoever was in there was trying to break open the floor of the air vent. I didn't know what was happening, but I was officially done with this. I ran up the stairs, locked up the school, and went home. I told Tom the partial truth the next day, that I thought I saw someone in the corner and it was gone when I went back. And I claimed there was nothing else I could say. Thank God it was my last week there, so it wasn't my concern anymore.
That was beyond terrifying. Yeah, let's watch him. What if you are gay? Oh wait, you are, because you won't fuck off. Ugh. You know what, guys, I could actually
probably the biggest skeptics in the world, which is why I can't explain what happened that day. I went downstairs and my brother was in the kitchen. I grabbed a water and asked him if he believed in ghosts. He shook his head, but told me a story about something that he thinks may seem paranormal. Then I looked at him and asked, "Did you ever try to scare me when I came home from school?" I planned on asking that question to follow with my story. "Once," he said. Somehow that calmed me down, and I wasn't going to bring anything else up because I thought it was some kind of closure. He continued by saying, "But all I did was shoot a Nerf gun bullet at you while you were on the computer." I wish he didn't say that. That wasn't what happened to me in the 7th grade. I do remember him shooting a Nerf gun at me, but it felt inferior to what I was about to tell him. I continued to speak with him about the story that follows. It happened in middle school when I was in 7th grade and recently started off the new year. I came home that day and went to my bedroom where I sat in my bed and put in earbuds to watch YouTube videos. My mom had called me to tell me that my brother would be gone or would be leaving soon to go to a friend's house. My parents also worked late, which means I would be home alone. I was a very quiet kid when no one was around because I always had this fear that there could be someone in the house with me. If I didn't make much noise, then they couldn't find me, right? I knew that suspicion could have possibly been true. I paused my YouTube video and headed to the bathroom. My house has a very weird layout. I'll try to explain what the important parts of this story looked like. If you were in my bathroom facing the door, you could step out and take a left, and my brother's room would be to your right at the end of the hallway, which is a short hallway. If you went right, you would reach the stairway that went down and stopped because there was a platform in the middle, and then you would walk in the same direction you came to get lower. The stairway leads to our main entrance of the house. We also have an alarm activated. If any doors or windows are opened, a box will immediately say which door has been used. I was in the bathroom and right about to flush the toilet when I heard a loud thud come from my brother's room. I assumed that he must be about to leave for his friend's house, so I flushed the toilet and got up to wash my hands. There were no more noises. The house felt still, but I felt like I was being listened to. I turned off the sink and walked over to the bathroom door to lock it. Something felt wrong. My stomach started to ache from fear. I felt like
I swear, like, people have like a sixth sense sometimes. Like, this kid is like, I know he's telling the story after it's happened, but he's saying like his body somehow felt it was happening while it was happening, which is very sixth sense sensing.
I was just being paranoid, but I also couldn't shake that weird feeling in my gut. So I waited for another noise. I didn't have my phone on me, so I couldn't text my brother. We had a house phone in there, but it made loud noises when you dialed, so I didn't want to risk it. Then I heard talking, which was definitely coming from my brother's room, but that was not my brother talking, and it couldn't have been my dad. The muttering was deep and low. It sent shivers down my spine.
Yep, time
I
to
could
go.
tell it was a voice because of the distinction of an S or a T, but I couldn't understand what it was saying. Then there was a slow pounding noise that started getting closer to me. It came out of my brother's room and nailed its way towards the bathroom door. It stopped dead in its tracks right at the door. I threw myself away from the door near the window, hoping that if it busted in, I could get away to leave. I couldn't fight whoever it was since I was a weak 7th grader, so that was out of the question. I covered my mouth to keep from breathing loudly in case they didn't know I was in the bathroom. Then they continued to walk. I could hear them making their way to the stairway, and then it stopped. I heard a loud crashing noise from what I thought was the middle platform of the stairs, and then again at the bottom. Then the muttering stopped, and the loud pounding made its way to the door. I heard the door open and close, and I heard the alarm go off for the door as well. I didn't know if it was safe or not, so I made my way to the door and rested my hand on the doorknob, still covering my mouth. To the left of me towards the ground is a laundry chute that led to our laundry room. If someone were to get from the main floor to the laundry room, it would definitely take over 30 seconds. But about 10 seconds after the door opened and closed, a vicious jabbing noise pounded at the small laundry chute door. I stood there in awe, not sure what to do. It sounded like someone took the end of a broom and reached up there to stab at the door. I watched as the pounding of the door vibrated the small laundry chute door, hoping that it wouldn't bust open. Then it ended. I waited in the bathroom for what seemed like an eternity, and then quietly crept to my room to call my parents. No one picked up, so I waited for them to get home and held my door handle to make sure no one could get in, since I didn't have a lock on it. When my parents got home, they didn't believe me. Soon after, my brother arrived, and he doubted me as well. Telling this again to my brother made his mouth drop. He continued to tell me that he used to hear things come from the attic that used to open up in his bedroom. I will honestly never forget that day. Me and my brother can't figure out who or what that was, and I try not to think too hard about it either. I still don't quite know what happened, and I may never know, but I want to.
Mate, just be grateful you didn't get taken. Because I don't think the person that was going into your house had very good intentions.
My name's Alyssa. I was 16 years old at the time, living with my mom in a crappy Bronx, New York apartment. Living in the Bronx was definitely an experience, not a good one. Always sketchy characters around, usually scary to walk alone at night, small apartment, and creepy neighbors. I don't mean that as an understatement. Our apartment was the second to last one in a hall on the 7th floor, and our neighbor, the owner of the last apartment in the hall, seemed to always be sitting outside his door, sitting on the windowsill. He would always make a point of looking at me when I entered the apartment, even when I would be with my mom. My mom told me to stay away from that man. We never even knew his name. He was a black man in his 60s, very little hair left, but his remaining hair was gray. He always had the same emotionless expression on his face when he looked at me. And then one day, it started. Every time I would see him in the hall, he would say hi to me, but he'd call me by my name to make it even creepier. I wasn't exactly sure how he got my name, but I never asked. There was one night that my mom was working the night shift, so I'd be home alone all night. I came home at like 9 p.m., and the neighbor was as usual sitting on that windowsill, as if he didn't have anything going on in his life.
Probably doesn't.
As I unlocked the door, this time instead of saying hi to me, he asked me if my mom was working tonight. Here's where I look back and cringe because of my own stupidity, because I foolishly nodded yes. He didn't say anything after that. He just slowly nodded his head. I didn't say...
I would have gone like, piss off, you old fart. And then that is the end of Luke Morris Kelso's life. Stabbed by a black man who he told to piss off, you old fart too.
Anything else either. I simply walked inside and shut the door. I had enough of his creepy ass for one night. Basically, after getting home, I just washed up a little bit. I had a snack, did laundry, and took a shower. As I was in the shower, I heard a weird rumbling noise. It was a pretty concerning noise, but I couldn't even begin to try and pin out what it could have been. I got out of the shower after hearing it because I was concerned someone might have been in the apartment. I heard a similar noise outside of the bathroom. It seemed to come from my bedroom. I threw on the clothes I had in the bathroom and searched my entire room.
This black man better not be a perv.
But while searching my room, I saw an ever so tiny hole in the wall. I got closer to feel it and look at it. Then I got down on my knees to look through it. And when I saw what was on the other side, I fell backwards because of how scared I was of what I saw. It was someone's eye.
Nah.
Someone was actually looking through that hole from the other side. Then I realized this wall separated our apartment from the creepy neighbor's apartment. Then I had a sudden realization of what that sound I heard in the bathroom must have been. I ran back to the shower and felt all around the wall until I found another hole, identical in size from the one in my room. The neighbor drilled these two holes, and even more, to spy on me. I called my mom and told her, and as I was on the phone with her, there were knocks on the apartment door. It was the neighbor, and he kept yelling, "Open the door right now, I didn't drill those holes." My mom freaked out and told me to call the cops, and she'd try to get home ASAP. One good thing...
Ah, yes. I didn't draw that. I didn't make those holes. Proceeds to... And proceeds to look through them. Fucking... black man. Shit. I dropped my mag.
About the Bronx, police response time is fast, and there were cops at my apartment door in under 5 minutes.
Wow.
My mom was home half an hour later. My mom pressed charges for stalking, invasion of privacy, and criminal mischief. The apartment building also evicted the man and patched up the holes at the man's expense.
Wonder what happened to the man. Probably homeless and dead. Hopefully. See, now I have more of a question. Was the person telling story number 2 a woman? Or was she a girl when this had happened? Because that explains a few... Although, pervs can perv on... Okay, I am asking questions that should not be asked or answered.
I'll never forget the time my friend Hal and I went camping. Hal is an Eagle Scout and nature lover, so he's always going out on these camping trips. One time I decided to come along and see what it was about. He went with his at-the-time girlfriend Maya. I received a last-minute invitation. We carpooled together and arrived to the destination 3 hours later. Hal doesn't believe in going to campsites because it doesn't give the real camping experience when you're surrounded by other people, so he took us to...
Ah, yes, so let's get completely immersed in nature when we're in fucking America. And we can get killed by animals, humans, psychotic maniacs, other animals, kites, trees, thunderstorms. The list is endless.
Some random dirt.
And if you guys are concerned at why I said kites, you don't want to know the backstory to why I said that,
Trail
trust
of
me.
some dead road that he seemed to know about. He drove down this dirt road in the woods for a couple minutes until he seemed to be content with where we were. Then he put the car in park. It was such an inconspicuous place to stop that I wasn't even aware at first that we were getting out there. Hal unloaded the trunk. Most of the stuff we brought consisted of tents, sleeping bags, food, toilet paper, and first aid equipment. Hal said he usually packed a lot lighter, but was making this an easy trip for Maya and I, whatever that meant. Once we found a good place to set up camp, Hal basically assigned us tasks. Setting up a tent was one thing I knew how to do, so Hal told me to set up the 2 tents. Maya stayed behind with me and kind of helped with the tents, while also unpacking some of the supplies. Hal went off to find dry firewood. He would come back every so often with a couple pieces of wood. Nightfall came quicker than expected. Thankfully, Hal had collected enough wood by then to start a nice fire, and the tents were pitched. We sat by the fire, drinking and reminiscing about old memories, most of which Maya was not in the picture for. I imagine she got tired of hearing our drunken, nonsensical stories because she went to her tent before Hal and I. So, Hal and I stayed up for a little while longer, now being a bit quieter and keeping the laughter to a minimum as a courtesy to Maya. I finished my last beer, and I was definitely feeling it by then. We chatted for a bit more, until Hal told me to shh and listened. I heard it too. There was walking out in the distance, beyond the area at which the fire lit up. Hal assured me it was likely a deer. When I naively asked, what if it's a bear, he reassured me that a bear would not come this close to a campfire or the sound of people. I asked him if he was sure about that. He didn't answer, though. The footsteps seemed to be going in circles, getting ever so slightly louder with each passing minute. When the footsteps got close enough, we started to hear a disturbing noise. It was like a clicking, growling type of noise. Is that a wolf? I whispered. Hal didn't answer. He just motioned for me to get into the tent. I did what he said. I got into the tent that I pitched for myself, and I believe Hal got into the tent that I pitched for he and Maya. The clicking noise outside was getting more and more clear, and it increasingly became obvious it was not the sound of a wolf, or a bear, or any kind of animal I could imagine. It didn't even sound like something of this planet. The light from the fire outside cast an eerie glow onto the walls of the tent. I had to cover my mouth so that I wouldn't scream when I saw the shadow on the tent walls of some horrific, huge, bipedal thing walking past my tent. The footsteps were so slow, but so heavy. It moved away from my tent towards the...
Okay, I'll tell you what it is. It's probably the same fucking creature that I saw on one of Bizarre Bub's videos, maybe. Where there was like this massive white creature that was doing... Or maybe it's a skinwalker that probably made the wrong noise. Oh god, I fell for the skinwalker. Shut the fuck up, crackheads. It's probably a crackhead. Who, unfortunately got a fucking whistle lodged in his throat. So whenever he exhales, he sounds like he's growling and whistling.
Direction of Hal and Maya's tent. The next thing I remember, besides waiting in absolute horror, was Maya's scream. She screamed as if something were about to kill her. I didn't know what was happening, but I heard Hal screaming outside, "Run," over and over. I heard the two of them hurrying away outside, so I rushed outside and followed. We ran in the pitch black, no flashlights, nothing, and yet we still knew we were being chased by something. Footsteps followed close behind me since I was in the back. By some miracle, Hal managed to lead us right to the car, and without looking back, we all got into our respective seats, and Hal floored it down the trail. Hal drove down the dirt trail for about half a minute before we came to a dead end. He had to somehow turn this pickup truck around now, in this dark forest, not too far from where we were being chased. I urged him to turn off the light so that whatever was chasing us wouldn't see us. He insisted he needed the lights on though so that he wouldn't hit any trees trying to turn the truck around. He shifted from drive to reverse, over and over. Meanwhile, I sat in the back seat biting my nails and clenching my teeth, looking around the woods outside, terrified that I might see that thing from our campsite. At long last...
The crackhead is just going like, yo, you got any drugs? But with all respect, just hit. Just hit. If that thing comes at you, hit it with a fucking bullet. Like, if you see that thing in the headlights, just don't even panic. How? Just go, oh, you want to play chicken? Just go full speed, smack into it, run it over several times.
Turned around and once again stepped on it to get us out of that forest. We left everything at that campsite, at least $100 worth of equipment, but there was zero chance of us ever going back there. What caused Maya to scream was heavy breathing and something pushing into their tent, trying to rip it open. Hal still says he's never heard or seen anything like that in his life. He still has no idea what it could have been, but it definitely walked on two legs. How do we know it wasn't a person, you might ask? Simply because of its size and the noises it made. I think everyone has one truly horrific, unexplainable experience in their lives, and this was ours.
Unfortunately, I haven't had that sort of moment because that hasn't happened to me yet. Partly because I'm not fucking mentally unstable, and to get myself in that situation. My parents have had that, my grandparents have had that. It's very terrifying. Yeah, we'll end this video on a good note. Come on. But yeah, this will be the last video, everyone. Because... fuck off. For horror stories where dogs save the day. Man's best friend.
I live in Dorset, Vermont. It's a very secluded, mountainous place. There's lots of trails on the mountain that I like to walk or jog down commonly. In fact, I'm able to cut through the woods in my yard to get to a trail that I walk and run down all the time. One day after getting home from work, I changed out of my work clothes and into my running clothes. By 6:45, I was ready to get on the trail. On this particular day, I took along my coonhound, Murphy. We did 5 minutes of walking. Then we started with a slow jog. Murphy is always a joy to walk because she doesn't pull. She always just stays calm at my side. The trail is wide enough for her to always stay by my side, maintaining my speed.
Yeah.
I was always looking up when I ran, which is why I didn't notice that Murphy stopped in her tracks until I felt the leash pull her neck, at which point I stopped and looked back at her to see what was wrong. She was looking behind us, and her ears did that little bouncing thing that hound dogs' ears do when they hear something. I mean, we were in the middle of the forest, so there was any number of things she could have heard. Anything from a deer to a squirrel to another person on the trail.
Here's where I want to declassify everything you just fucking said, because that was incorrect in every sort of way. If you have trained your dog well enough, that, well, I'm just going off with how my granddad has trained his dog. Like, his dog will sometimes have one of those days where he wants to act like a playful pup, because dogs aren't like robots. They aren't going to always act well. But if you train them well enough, they'll always be loyal. But whenever he's like on a job, there's only one situation where Buzz will just leg it, and that's a rare occurrence where it won't happen. That rarely happens. Point is, if you train your dog just to keep on running with you and then suddenly it stops for no reason, then that's when you want to be somewhat concerned.
I tried to pull her forward to continue our run, but she seemed persistent and reluctant to move forward. I played along for a few moments to let her see that she was curious over nothing. But it wasn't nothing, because I finally saw what she was looking at. There was a man back down the trail in the direction we came from. He was clearly not hiding the fact that he was looking at Murphy and I. I waved at him to try and be friendly, and then looked down at Murphy as I pulled her and told her to come. She finally budged and started running by my side again. not without looking back twice at the man. It's happened before, though. People on these small trails would commonly wait for me to move ahead so they could avoid passing the dog. Usually they'd be out earlier in the day, though. At this point it was on the darker side, and usually there wouldn't be other people out. I also did notice if the man waved back or not because I looked down at Murphy after waving. But at that moment, I still thought everything was normal. That is until maybe a minute later, when Murphy stopped me again. This time she looked ahead of us and started barking. I saw who she was looking at right away this time. It was another man walking slowly towards us. I waved to him too, but he didn't wave back. I was standing still, holding Murphy close, expecting the man to eventually pass me, but the closer he got, the slower he went. When he got within hearing range, I told him that Murphy's friendly and that he could pass. Now here's when I knew something was up. After I said this, the man maintained eye contact with me, keeping his straight face as he very slowly continued approaching us. Then I noticed Murphy turn around and start barking in the other direction, behind us. I turned and almost had a heart attack when I saw that man from earlier, maybe 5 feet away from us, slowly approaching as well. I knew now something bad was about to go down. There were only a few seconds between that moment and the moment I felt 2 arms reach around me from behind. Then the first man I saw earlier started full-on charging me. Murphy's barks turned to aggressive growling and rabid dog-like barks. Then one of the men screamed as apparently Murphy bit him in the leg and wouldn't let go.
At a dog!
I forced the man to release his grip on me, giving me a chance to tackle the other man to the ground.
At a dog!
It took a little force to get Murphy to release her grip from the man's leg, but when she did, we ran back down the trail. The man who I tackled didn't try fighting back after his friend got bitten. I think he realized they were outmatched at that point. I was still not sticking around to find out what their intentions were.
And so you should. Man's best friend for... What kind of dumbass tries to jump a man and his dog? Like, are you stupid? You may have 2 men, but that doesn't mean jack shit. Unless the dog is like a chihuahua, even then I think you still gotta have a problem. But if it's like a chihuahua size, then you're pretty much fucked. Mate.
We got back to the house in 5 minutes, only because we sprinted back. I checked Murphy to make sure she wasn't hurt or wounded at all by the man she bit. She was fine. I couldn't be more grateful for her. She's still alive and well. She's 9 years old.
No.
I still see it as a blessing in disguise that one of the few times I decided to take Murphy along with me was the same night I ran into those 2 men in the forest.
Dogs really are the best. They really are man's best friend.
My pit bull Callie sleeps in my room with me.
Pit bulls, hell yeah! Right, anyone in the audience who are saying, oh, pit bulls, they're so dangerous, fuck off. That is a stereotype and I will not have that. And if you do say that, I will beat your fucking ass. And I hope that you know that I will forever hate you. Pit bulls are one of the most, if not friendliest dogs on this planet. Unfortunately, they have now got the stereotype of being bred to fight, which is absolute bullshit.
I have a loft bedroom, meaning it's a higher level in the house than the rest of the rooms. My room also has a very large closet elevated off the ground. I keep a little stepping stool to get into it. It's mainly just a bunch of childhood toys stored in there, though. One night, I woke up to growling. I sat up and saw Callie standing in the middle of the room. She was looking up at the closet. Needless to say, as a 14-year-old, that scared the shit out of me to even imagine what she could have been growling at. I called her up to my bed so I could pet her and calm her down. She licked her lips and stopped growling, now looking at me. I turned to give another look at the closet door in the dark. She stopped growling now, though, so I figured it was just her doggy imagination running wild. I went back to sleep pretty easily, now with Callie in the bed with me. I woke up again, God knows how many hours later, now to Callie's barking. She was in the center of the room again, looking up at the closet.
Okay, if your pit bull is full on barking, have your parents not been notified? They are fucking deep sleepers, mate.
I told her to shut up, and after she looked at me in silence, I heard a jar of Legos spill inside the closet.
Time to fucking call the police and scream your parents down now.
Callie started going crazy now, barking and trying to jump up the stepladder, clawing at the wall. I heard my bedroom door open and my dad came up the stairs screaming, "What the hell is going on?" I told him to check the closet, there's someone in there. He ran past Callie, up the stepladder, and pulled the door open. The second he opened that door, someone dressed in jeans, a black pullover hoodie, and black beanie pushed my dad off the step stool, causing him to fall on his back. The man in the black hoodie then took off, leaving my room down the stairs. However, Callie took off after him. I heard the two of them rushing down the stairs, but it sounded like Callie caught him because the man let out a scream of pain.
Gotta go!
My dad and I went down to the living room to see Callie with her teeth sunk into the man's arm. Blood was spilled all over the carpet. Apparently, Callie bit the man in the leg and the arm. My dad got Callie off of him and told me to take her back to my room while he called the cops. The man was moaning in pain up until the cops calmly entered the house, looked down at the man, and they picked him up together. They brought him outside, where an ambulance arrived 10 minutes later. He was taken away in the ambulance. The next few days, my dad spent talking to lawyers and whatnot in order to sue the man for breaking and entering. He ended up winning the case, obviously. He never told me how much money he got, but he sure did make it known just how much Callie saved the day for our family.
And anyone who says pit bulls are bad dogs, just look at what a pit bull did to a bad person. Fucking deserved it.
The first dog I ever got was back in 1992, when I was 10 years old.
Oh.
My parents finally agreed to let me get my German Shepherd,
Aw.
my lifelong favorite dog. The only thing, they made me walk him twice a day as the one condition to owning him. Once in the afternoon and once at night. His name was Calvin.
Calvin?
This happened on a snow...
Are you serious? Parents, what? Okay, I mean, I get the fact that it's a German Shepherd, but you are psychotic. Ah, yes, we're just going to let our son, a child, walk his puppy at the afternoon and at night, where he could possibly get jumped and kidnapped, as well as his dog kicked and beaten to death. We are brilliant parents.
Snowy December night.
But
Day is the one condition to owning him.
hang on.
Once in the afternoon and once at night. His name was Calvin.
Calvin? Oh.
This happened on a snowy December night. I begged my dad to let me just let Calvin in the yard, but he insisted I walk him. He always did. And walking him twice...
And your dad is an idiot, because at night is when you normally don't want to let... This is how people lose their children. This is generally how you lose a child.
Today quickly became a huge chore. I threw on my snow boots, a sweatshirt, and then a jacket over that, and finally my snow hat. I was ready for the cold snowstorm. We set out into the neighborhood streets, Calvin pulling ahead as usual. There were no cars on the road at all on this night. There was simply way too much snow. We walked down the edge of the neighborhood by the woods. I remember...
Okay, here's some advice. Get your sled, attach your leash to... attach the Calvin's leash to said sled, and you got a sled.
I remember wanting to see if the roads had been plowed anywhere yet. We came to an intersection between two very quiet roads by the woods at the edge of the neighborhood. That's where I ran into him. I heard the sound of footsteps crushing the snow behind me. Calvin turned first and barked a couple times. It was a man bundled up in snow gear. He had a scarf covering half his face, so all I could really see were his eyes. But I could still tell he was on the older side, 40 plus. His voice was muffled through his scarf as he called to me in a friendly voice. Then he did something unexpected. He picked up some snow, patted it into a snowball, and seemingly playfully threw it at me. I dodged it, now not knowing how to react. He came closer and started to pet Calvin. I was pretty uncomfortable, to be honest. The man stood back up after petting Calvin, then put his shoulder on me and said I shouldn't be alone out here on a night like this.
Yeah.
I think I remember telling him I wasn't. I was with my dog.
True.
There were some more words exchanged. I don't remember what, but I do remember eventually walking away from that man without saying bye. Even though I didn't look back, Calvin kept looking back, and I slightly heard footsteps in the snow behind me again, so I knew he was following me. I figured he was following me home, which is why I was caught off guard when I heard the footsteps behind us increase in speed and intensity, causing Calvin to turn and start barking. The man grabbed me with one arm and covered my mouth with his other arm. I think Calvin started biting him, but he was wearing so many layers that he was able to ignore the pain, but only for so long. The man finally let go of his grip on me and aimed his attention at Calvin by kicking at him over and over. Eventually the man gave up and took off for the woods.
You dick. I hope you get fucking Polaroids, you fucking scumbag. Anyone here who kicks the dogs, I will kick your face. How about that?
Calvin pulled so hard.
If it is an accidental kick, like you're kicking a football and the dog gets in the way, that I understand and I will get you off with a light punch. But if it was an intentional kick aimed at the dog, I will beat your fucking ass.
After him, his leash snapped off the collar, and off Calvin dashed, disappearing into the woods. I heard his barks fade away into the darkness as I screamed his name over and over. I returned home crying, telling my parents that Calvin was chasing after some man and that he was gone. I stayed up all night hoping he would return home. He never did. Calvin was my first dog, and losing him was my first real heartbreak. I like to think he was found and brought to a shelter somewhere, because I wholeheartedly believe that dog saved my life.
Aww. Beautiful.
I live on a farm in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. It's just my wife and our infant son living there. Oh, and of course my Rottweiler, Jesse.
Rottweilers,
Jesse sleep outside in his doggy house from the months of May to October. It serves as an extra form of protection and intimidation to potential burglars. It also allows for him to do his business freely without having to wake one of us up. Jesse always has a mount attached to his collar that connects to the doggy house so that he can't run away or get lost. Very seldom at night we hear Jesse barking, and given that he's a guard dog, he's trained to bark at suspicious people. So I always go out and check when we hear him barking. But again, it's very, very seldom. I'm gonna skip the fluff and get right to the night that my wife and I woke up at like 1:30 a.m. to Jesse's barks outside. I told my wife, who was also sitting up with me, to wait in the bed. I'll go have a look. I slipped on my shoes and...
Please tell me you brought out like a lever action shotgun, because you're going to need one of those, mate. You never know.
Went outside in my robe. Jesse took notice to me for a second, but resumed barking in the direction of our crops. I had to go back inside for a flashlight and Jesse's leash, because I planned on going in the crops with him. After clipping
And
Jesse's
without a
leash
gun,
onto
you
his collar,
fucking
he
idiot.
knew right away to take lead. He led me into the crops. I had the flashlight on, but given the basic nature of a cornfield, I didn't really see much in front of me besides crops in my face, regardless of the light. Jesse stopped barking, but he was still pulling me through the crops, as if he knew exactly where he was going.
Oh, he does.
Then, out of nowhere, he stopped sniffing and just stopped. He looked up, but I didn't know if he heard something, if he was looking at something, or if he was just lost. The two of us stood in silence right there for a little bit. I heard crops in the near distance being brushed around suddenly. Jesse's head was all over the place. He was looking left, then right, then left again, as if he were hearing sounds coming from everywhere. He started barking and pulling again, but this time I yanked him back to stay put. I swallowed and took a deep breath before calling out into the night that this was a private property and anyone caught trespassing would be brought to jail. It took more bravery calling that out than you may think. And of course, I was going to yell out a threat like that. What else could I say? The situation felt so surreal. And then... it was the scream of a woman, a distressed, manic, deranged kind of scream. Jesse started pulling in the direction of the screams, but the more we ran, the further the screams seemed to get, until they completely stopped. Then Jesse once again stopped running and started looking around in different directions. Suddenly, there was the sound of someone zooming past us, rushing through the crops. In fact, they were so close I could see some of the crops maybe 5 feet from my face being brushed aside. This time, I let Jesse off the leash. I told him to go, catch them. Jesse disappeared in seconds. I heard his barks, though. He was getting further away with every passing second, until I was sitting in the middle of the crops alone, shaking in fear. I was so scared, I didn't even want to move in fear of making noise and giving away my position. I was as scared as a young child. Then, the most horrific thing to ever happen to me happened. A couple crops were brushed aside behind me, and something grabbed my right shoulder. I don't mean a friendly, light tap on the shoulder. I mean something grabbed my shoulder tight and squeezed to the point of it hurting. I screamed, and without looking back, ran in the direction I was 90% sure led back to the house. On my way back, I could hear Jesse's barks in the far distance. I wasn't about to go looking for him, though. I thanked God when I saw the roof of my house come into view in the distance, and I finally reached the edge of the cornfield onto the back lawn. I passed the big oak tree in the yard and Jesse's doghouse and went straight through the back door. I checked every door and every window to make sure they were locked. I told my wife as little as I could to prevent a freakout, but I did tell her there was someone, maybe even more than one person in the crops. We called the sheriff's office and waited up for a while, making sure no one came to either door, and in hopes that Jesse would come back. And thank our lucky stars, he did.
It still doesn't excuse the fact that you fucking dipped out, you puff. My God, what if your dog had died? Mate, how would you have felt then?
When the deputy finally pulled up the dirt road to our farm an hour later, he found Jesse sitting on the back deck of the house. There wasn't much the deputy could do other than take down my description of what happened. He said it himself, he wasn't about to go searching around that cornfield. We let Jesse sleep inside for the next few nights for his own safety, and after almost a week of uneventfulness, things went back to normal. There hasn't been a similar incident since.
So are we just going to completely ignore the fact that there was a random bitch-ass scream in the middle of nowhere? Nothing? Well, anyway guys, this is where I'm going to leave it. Yeah, dog's a man best friend for a reason, and yeah. I hope you guys know that maybe some of these stories are real, maybe some are not. I really hope the third story of this one isn't real, because I really don't want to know that there is a dog that maybe... You know what I mean. I don't want that story to be true. But point is, dog's a man best friend. Disturbing stories are really fucking creepy, and I'm probably still going to be able to get to sleep because I'm fucking insane. I'll see you guys in the next one.